And we're live. Welcome to episode 239 of the G2 on 5G. It's the latest inside scoop on everything 5G and 6G. We cover 6 topics in about 20 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend. Joining me again this week is fellow analyst Anshel Sag. Let's get started with my first topic. And Anshel, I want to talk about AT&T. And just yesterday, on October 8th, the company declared its nationwide 5G standalone deployment. This is obviously big news. You and I, for years, have talked about the true promise of 5G, matching RAN and 5G core infrastructure. And so AT&T has finally accomplished this major milestone. This also follows recently on the heels of the company's announcement around 5G RedCap technology, and it's available nationwide as well. So this is a great milestone for AT&T. Yeah, we knew it was going to come. I do recall that we predicted that this would happen for AT&T in the second half of this year, so we can take our victory laps there. I'm expecting now that sort of paves the way for some very innovative services, especially when it comes to slicing. When you look at what T-Mobile has done with T-Priority, with TIoT, their SASE solution that has a security slice, and most recently Super Mobile. So what are your thoughts? What do you expect to see from AT&T now that they've established this huge milestone?
I have a lot of thoughts. I think this is a long time coming. I'll say for a future topic, I'm surprised that it took this long.
Yeah.
I was really expecting them to launch it last year. Honestly, even before that. But I think it was so closely tied to their mid-band rollout that it took a little bit longer than I would have liked. They do have a very strong enterprise customer base.
They do.
And they're going to have lots of business opportunities here. I think the one thing that people don't really realize is that application developers, ISVs, and a bunch of other companies that are doing software, they can't really optimize for standalone until there's enough carriers to support it. And when T-Mobile was kind of going out on their own and being ahead of everybody, it wasn't enough for application developers to want to build towards standalone and with the expectation that standalone would be available. So I think we're getting to the point where maybe people actually start building for standalone more. And obviously Verizon needs to come to reality and launch 5G SA. But it's quite clear that AT&T was very close, like you said, with the standalone thing, RedCap, because you can't do RedCap without standalone, right? It's not possible. So, it was quite clear AT&T was close. I'm glad that they, have gotten over, their fixed wireless service was also standalone only. So it was quite clear they were close, but they hadn't reached that nationwide claim yet. And I just think it's super important. It's going to be huge for business applications. I think we're going to see a lot more use of the 5G network in ways that 4G didn't really deliver. Because, a lot of people have this negative sentiment towards 5G because we didn't have standalone networks, so we weren't really able to create new applications and new use cases for 5G, and also take more advantage more of the network. So this is huge. This is really huge, and it's a really big milestone for AT&T. It's important for the industry, and now we just need Verizon to catch up, because once they do, I think we're going to see a lot of uptake on 5G, which might end up kind of rolling into 6G. But it will have been 5G who kind of started it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think your insight on the developer community is spot on. I mean, there have been, sandboxes available, with 5G core and 5G RAN. But now that, you've got AT&T declaring, nationwide standalone, and I expect Verizon's going to be very close by the end of the year as well. But I think, to your point, that's really going to provide the incentive for developers to really focus on it. And competition's a good thing. I always like to say competition breeds innovation. And I'm excited to see. I mean, we're just starting to begin to see some of the red cap solutions in the market. I mean, you've talked quite a bit about that portable modem that you have there, and just the opportunity to extend connectivity to wearables and do that very cost effectively, I think is going to be an exciting development as well. So I'm good friends with Igal Bez that basically manages the entire network as the CTO for AT&T. So just want to congratulate Igal and the team. This is a huge milestone, and I'm hoping to spend more time with him in the future just to learn about the roadmap. I mean, you and I had that opportunity with T-Mobile several weeks ago. Now, a lot of that, most of it, if not all of it, we cannot share because that's under non-disclosure. But suffice it to say, I think you're going to see some pretty exciting things from T-Mobile, and I do agree that with AT&T we're going to see the same thing as well. So, but hey, let's move to your first topic, and you want to talk about Intel and some node advancements, and also just some general updates on Panther Lake and Clearwater Forest.
Yeah, so these aren't inherently 5G products.
Yeah, they're CPUs, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, Panther Lake is a consumer product running on Intel's new 18A foundry, Fab 52 in Ocotillo, Arizona. So that helps bring leading edge node manufacturing to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But also, Clearwater Forest is a server CPU, and it is a 288 core CPU with tiny little cores that are highly efficient. And there was a demo of it helping run a 5G network.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be targeted towards telecom applications because of the really power efficient and numerous cores.
Right.
So that's kind of the 5G angle there. But also there will be Panther Lake based systems that will have 5G modems attached to them. Intel will not provide them, but they will have partners, using the PCIe lanes to do 5G PCs.
Right.
But really, what this means is that there's going to be a lot more performance and lower power, both in the server and at the client side for 5G. And they did show us some edge IoT applications as well, specifically for AI at the edge using Panther Lake for a more embedded application as opposed to something like a consumer PC. So robotics or edge gateways, but extremely low power, but also high performance with new GPU cores, new NPUs, and new CPU cores, which are built on 18A. So a quick breakdown is Intel has this chiplet architecture where it will combine different types of cores from different foundries to make the most cost-efficient, high-performance chip possible. This was kind of forced upon them based on their lack of leadership in foundry, which is why 18A is such a big deal, because they're actually able to use 18A to build their CPU cores for both products, and then also mix between Intel and TSMC for the GPU and some of the IO tiles as well. So it's a very tiled chiplet-like approach, and it's going to be good for everybody, I think, in terms of competition, cost, and also giving OEMs more choice in how they build their systems.
Yeah. Hey, so did you do that tour with our colleague Matt Kimball?
Yeah, so I was there longer than he was actually.
Okay.
So I did the fab tour with him. The first day was client day, second day was server day.
Okay.
And lots of Q&A and NDA discussions and panels and things like that. But it was a long day, and I went straight from Hawaii home for less than 12 hours, and then went to Arizona for 3 or 4 days. So that was my last trip of the year.
Yeah. Before you're expecting your new little one. Matt was quite impressed, just walking some of these fabs and just the expanse. And one of the comments he made was just the really high degrees of automation. And he said that on his little 1 mile sprint around, it may have been 18A, that he said that he could count, the number of actual human beings on, both of his hands.
Yeah,
So very
I'll,
highly
I'll
automated.
explain. I'll explain that. The lower the process node, the bigger the foundry, the fewer the people.
Yeah.
Because the precision required needs more automation.
Right.
They have these carriers going around with 25 wafers each on a 30-mile track around the foundry.
Mm-hmm.
We walked through 52, which has these gigantic EUV ASML machines. They've
Mm-hmm.
got lines of them in rows because they want to have that capacity to build, and they have room for expansion. So
Yeah.
it's also, it's like a class 10 clean room. So
Right.
the air gets recirculated every 6 minutes. And it's designed to be leading edge, top of the line for
Mm-hmm.
Intel or their customers. And that's really the message you're trying to send is like, they're
Yeah.
ready to do business.
Yeah.
And I think having these products come out and be successful will ultimately cause, give people cause to move to Intel as a foundry
Mm-hmm.
in the US.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe so too. And we need very efficient, high production semiconductor capacity in manufacturing in the United States. We can't continue to rely on TSMC to do everything. I don't subscribe to the belief that Intel is too big to fail, but they're on a roll, right? When you look at the most recent news with what's been going on with them, and the stock has done quite well. I mean, there have been some major changes that have had to be made, and unfortunately, we both know some folks that have had to retire early or move on, and but it's going to be fun to watch, and I believe that Intel has a lot of potential, and I'm not going to say that they're too big to fail, but we desperately need what they can provide, and from a manufacturing and a capacity perspective, and just domesticating the supply chain, right? Given the warranted concerns, with TSMC and Taiwan, and escalating tensions with China, with all the geopolitics that are going on there. But I don't want to get too far into politics, man. We're going to stick to technology on this podcast. So I'm going to go to my second topic, and I caught the news recently about Vodafone. They're claiming that they have launched the first low Earth orbit satellite mobile broadband research hub. This is at the University of Malaga, and they are partnering, no surprise, with AST Space Mobile as well to do this. And kind of as I read through the press release on the Vodafone website, it's interesting. So, the vision here is to streamline the process of testing and validating hardware and software required for basically combining, non-terrestrial network solutions with terrestrial ones. There are other third parties that are going to be involved in this. This is great for Europe, from my perspective. I mean, obviously, when you look at the infrastructure providers, you've got Nokia, you've got Ericsson. I mean, they're obviously European as well. But I really like what Vodafone's doing. I mean, obviously, they have a vested interest in this because they have invested in AST Space Mobile. I'm still sticking by my guns with the assertion that I do believe that the AST Space Mobile overall tech stack is superior to what exists in the market today. That doesn't mean it can't change tomorrow. There have been some delays in getting their birds in the air. They're working through that right now. I think I've mentioned on a podcast a few weeks ago that I'm hoping to have some additional time with Abel and his team in Midland, and I'll even be in Barcelona in December, and I know that they have an operation there as well. But hoping to get some time with him and the team just to sort of get an update on where they're headed, and their vision for what's going on. But I don't know if you caught this news. Any thoughts before we move to your second topic?
I didn't really catch this news, but it's not really a surprise considering Vodafone's interactions with AST Space Mobile.
Yeah.
Um, I think it makes sense for them to have something like this established,
Yeah.
but it'll be interesting to see um, how this evolves and how it expands within Europe.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, let's go to your second topic, and I'm going to talk about Verizon too, but I'm going to let you start off. And you want to talk about a strategic acquisition and what that might mean for the company, I believe, for its fixed wireless access service, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So Verizon acquired Starry, and Starry is a fixed wireless um, provider.
Not to
That
be confused with the lemon lime soda drink that I see
correct.
in Vegas all the time. So,
Yeah, and Starry is still fairly small. They're mostly focused on multi-dwelling units um, in Boston, Denver, LA, New York, and DC.
yeah.
Um, and it also recently pulled out of Columbus, Ohio. So um, they're not really in like the best financial situation
Yeah.
because they laid off half their workers in 2022 and filed for bankruptcy in 2023.
Oh wow.
Um, they currently serve 100,000 customers, um, and um,
Was that you or me?
that's fire alarm testing.
Oh,
Um,
great.
yeah, during a podcast, of course.
Awesome.
Um, but yeah, they're fairly small, but Verizon thinks that they have the ability to grow their fixed wireless base to 8 to 9 million customers
Okay.
using Starry as kind of like a launch pad,
Got it.
because multi-dwelling units are a great way to get lots of customers quickly.
Yeah.
Um, but it seems like maybe Starry didn't really have the resources to grow in a way that I believe Verizon could actually help them.
Hmm.
Um, and the truth is that Verizon's fixed wireless business has been good, but it's not been as great as T-Mobile's, and they've
Exactly.
kind of lagged behind. So I think it's a good opportunity for them to grow. Um, Ironically, their fixed wireless business is the oldest because they
Hmm.
started it with millimeter wave, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think this is just a natural synergy here.
Yeah.
They didn't say what the acquisition price was, but I can't imagine it was very much. They probably have a lot of debt still.
Yeah.
Um, and interesting thing is that they say they expect this acquisition to be expected to be closed by the first quarter of 2026. Um, but I think that uh, there's good synergy, and I think Starry customers will probably be happier that they have a bigger, more reliable company behind their ISP.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's like 100,000 customers isn't much,
Right.
but I could see Verizon easily doubling that or tripling that in the first year or two, just because they already have a footprint in place, and Verizon has lots of spectrum as well.
Yeah. So I saw the news, but I didn't dig into it. So this is not Verizon acquiring this company for any sort of intellectual property. It's acquiring this company as sort of a distribution channel, right?
Yeah, and they specifically said this architecture is less expensive to build.
Yeah.
So they're using Star's architecture, which is low
Oh,
cost.
so there is some
So there is
IP.
some IP, and
Okay.
so they say this architecture is less expensive to build, quicker to deploy, and uniquely addresses the complexities of
Okay.
urban settings where we can leverage our existing fiber and millimeter wave assets. So
Oh,
they're
okay.
kind of looking for this is like a good easy way for them to get that last mile
Yeah.
cheaply, leveraging their already existing network, because let's be honest, Verizon's present in most major markets. So
Right.
this would be a way for them to roll out these MDU
Got it.
multi-dwelling unit fixed wireless solutions that are cheaper and they can charge less for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that, okay. So I get it. So it sounds like it's some sort of, mesh. It's probably got a radio and then
Yes,
the CPEs are probably less expensive. And yeah. Okay.
and this kind of reminds me when Google Fiber bought WebPass. I think it's very similar, right?
Okay.
Where it's
Okay.
like you're buying a fairly small customer base, but you're also buying technology that's cheaper and easier to deploy.
Got it. Got it. And I think, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But I think, yeah, this could potentially be. I mean, from a distribution perspective, I mean, yeah, Verizon could pump some bucks into this, and Yeah, and to your point, support it, and it solves their last mile, challenge, and I like it. Okay, so it's a combination of some IP, but it's definitely a distribution channel play as well. So cool. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Verizon has lagged. Not only with its standalone rollout with 5G, but it's had a big hole, obviously. Excuse me, in its spectrum footprint. They filled that. They did that very expensively, as you and I have discussed on numerous podcasts. But interesting stuff. Well, I'm going to end with my third topic about Verizon too, and I want to talk about Hans Vestberg's somewhat hasty exit. And one of my favorite journalists, Ian Morris, that writes for Light Reading, he's a cheeky Brit, and he's always got something controversial to say. But he posted something on Light Reading recently, and sort of talked about hey, this was a pretty sudden announcement, and it was pretty, there wasn't a lot of information provided, other than it was just time, for the company in the AI era to sort of move on. And what he did is he sort of went back and looked at several years ago when Hans was named CEO. There was a lead up, so it wasn't super sudden. And and we and I have talked about the transition at the CEO position at T-Mobile, how that's been fairly telegraphed out. There appeared to be a succession plan around that. It's not out of the ordinary, right, given their cadence. But what Ian talks about in his article is that when Hans took over several years ago, it was telegraphed out. It was orchestrated. There was a lot of time. So he's sort of intimating that maybe Hans, maybe he was pushed out for other reasons. And it's interesting. You and I have talked about him. Hey, listen, I've met him. He's a very charismatic guy. He's got friends in very high places, and I won't name the infrastructure company, but there's someone at a very large cellular infrastructure company that he and
Where he came from.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, and where he came from as well, but has remained friends there. But long and the short of it, Verizon's missed. They've missed on their execution with their 5G deployment. They went from hero, I don't want to say hero to zero, but in the LTE world, they absolutely, it's hard to argue that they didn't have the most reliable, the most expansive LTE network. That's not been the case with 5G. And I follow the financials somewhat with Verizon. They've been, and you and I have covered their financials on many podcasts. They've been good, but they haven't been just kick ass, knock it out of the park like T-Mobile or even AT&T as well. When you especially look, with the mobility ads that T-Mobile has been able to ring in with its investment in its 5G standalone network, and when you look at the investment that John Stankey and team have made it at AT&T with respect to basically overbuilding fiber, going into parts of the country that were underserved, and basically investing forward and not expecting the typical ROI that they see on fiber deployments, in less dense populated areas. There's a lot to be said here. So it'll be interesting. I don't know a lot about the new Verizon CEO. But
Ex-PayPal.
Yeah, he's ex-PayPal. PayPal's had its ups and downs as well, right? But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Dan Schulman can turn. I don't want to say turn things around, but sort of accelerate the company on the right trajectory. So what do you think? Am I being overly harsh? Is Ian being overly harsh about Hans?
No.
Okay.
Hans is a CEO, was the CEO, correction. He should have pivoted when it was clear that the millimeter wave push was not it.
Was not going to happen. Well, that it was not going to be economically viable, right?
Correct.
So, yeah.
And the problem is they doubled down on it.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, we need spectrum, let's get an auction going.
Right.
because that's the truth is, right? Like they needed the spectrum.
Yeah.
They weren't going to be able to buy Sprint, right? No one was ever going to let them buy Sprint. Um, AT&T tried to buy T-Mobile. That
Yeah.
didn't happen, if you remember.
Yeah.
So they couldn't acquire their way out of the situation. So they clearly needed a spectrum auction. The
Yeah.
C-band auction was the answer to that question.
Mm-hmm.
Admittedly, it came late, so I can't fully blame him for not having the spectrum that he needed. But
Right.
also, that there were other ways, there are other paths, and they fumbled millimeter wave, they fumbled DSS.
Yeah.
They really pissed off a lot of their customers, and
Yeah.
I think that's really the ultimate problem is instead of being open with their customers, they were basically saying that they've got the fastest, best network, and they just didn't.
Yeah.
And with mid band, I think in C band they're doing a lot better. I
Mm-hmm.
just actually was at the park with my daughter, and I ran a speed test in the park, and I was getting over 500 megabits per second. Um, Although in the same spot, I got 800 on T-Mobile.
Yeah.
So they're still not in that leadership position, but they've plugged a lot of the holes that they had before. I just think that, like, honestly, I think Hans should have been removed a while ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's more harsh or less harsh than you, but um, I think that this was a long time coming, actually.
Yeah.
And the timing is surprising, mostly because, like, why now, right? Um, I mean, honestly, like, it's kind of funny that AT&T announced their standalone network like the day after,
Right.
um, which to me is like maybe they fired him because they heard AT&T is going to launch standalone. I don't think that's actually happening,
I
but
don't think so
like
either. But.
what it does is it firmly puts Verizon in third place in terms of
Oh
like
yeah.
what their network can do. That said, if you look
Yeah.
at like a lot of the metrics, Verizon's network is a little bit faster than AT&T's in a lot of ways. Um, but I just think AT&T's network is more capable.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Another thing is Verizon really invested a lot in edge compute, but like, well, what are people going to do with edge compute if the network isn't capable of like leveraging that? So
Exactly.
um, I think they made a lot of the wrong bets, and they did not pay off. And that's why we are where we are today, and why the CEO has been replaced.
Yeah. 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 They just they hung their hat on millimeter wave way too long. And that was the spectrum that they had in their toolbox, right? But they should have they should have let it go. Now a lot of this was like, the FCC was dysfunctional, and the whole management of spectrum farming and that sort of thing has needed a total overhaul. And so they had to wait for C-band, and then when they got it, they paid an astronomical amount of money for it, right?
Yep,
Like 40 billion dollars, if my recollection serves me.
52.9
Okay, I was off
with
by
clearing costs.
with clearing cost on top of that. So anyway, we're not going to beat this horse anymore. So let's wrap things up with your third topic, and you want to sort of frame like all these big AI deals that we're seeing, and what that means for 5G and 6G. And it's interesting that you picked this as a topic because Matt Kimball and Paul and I recorded our data center podcast this morning, and we led with the OpenAI AMD deal and how unconventional that is. And so, like, I'm really curious to see how you're going to tie that to 5G and 6G. I think I know where you're going, but why don't you share
Yeah.
that?
Well, I'm looking at it from the perspective of course, 5G and 6G, but really it's like, okay, you know, OpenAI is driving a lot of this right now, right?
Yeah,
Whether it's NVIDIA, AMD, Oracle, you name it, right? Like everybody's kind of getting into the party, and the truth is, like, what a lot of this is focused on is agentic, AI,
yeah,
and I'm thinking about, like, how do these deals affect 5G and 6G? One, in terms of what does the architecture look like to get this compute closer to the users to
yeah.
give them a good experience? Like,
Hmm.
how much edge compute does OpenAI need to invest in, and what does that edge compute look like? And then also, how do the carriers work with OpenAI to leverage this capability? because
Mhm.
right now the only carrier that's like explicitly working with OpenAI is T-Mobile.
Yeah.
Verizon has like a Me Too announcement as well, but it was
Yeah.
very clear that Sam Altman showed up at the T-Mobile
That it was
Capital Markets Day,
strategic. That it was
right?
strategic. I completely agree with you, man. I completely agree with
So,
you.
like I'm thinking about like how do all of these investments in OpenAI and clearly how OpenAI is accelerating its plans, how does that affect what's going on with NVIDIA and OpenAI and
Hmm.
you know there's going to be a little piece of compute left over that's not running the network, not running the RAN,
Yeah.
um, not doing orchestration, but can be utilized for applications that will be at the edge.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? And I would love to see OpenAI and T-Mobile talk about that a little more,
Yeah. Yeah.
since they haven't really since the Capital Markets Day.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that like everybody's kind of betting on OpenAI right now. I
Yeah.
don't think they're the only dog to bet on, but
Yeah.
I think that they're clearly pushing the envelope in everywhere that they can.
Yeah, I agree, and just the creativity of this deal with AMD for like 6 gigawatts of GPU. I mean, that's massive. I mean, that's billions of dollars potentially for AMD, and then AMD in turn issuing equity. But as I read through the deal, and our fearless leader Patrick Moorhead has weighed in on social media on this as well. There's certain triggers that have to be met for that equity to flow. But what I really like about it is it allows AMD, that's been in kind of second position, not kind of, they've been in second position relative to NVIDIA on the compute side. It provides them some tailwind to really drive the volume on their GPU platform and what their DPU platform, because they're accelerators that leverage Pensando as well. And and like I always like to say, competition breeds innovation. And what this means is that there's going to be more choice. And to your point, there are lots of other models. There's OpenAI, there's IBM Granite, there's ChatGPT, but I really like this deal. It's we live in very unconventional times, and that was sort of kind of what I shared on the data center podcast earlier this morning. But I do like it, and I agree with you that there is a potential impact on telecommunication services. Not the infrastructure, we've talked about that, AI RAN and that sort of thing, but really on the applications and the services. And I'm glad I had sort of forgotten about, the OpenAI T-Mobile announcement. We need to hear some more about how that is progressing, right? Because it has a lot of potential. It was a little squishy. There weren't, a ton of concrete details, but that's how partnerships start, right? And then
And I'll say,
yeah,
I can't imagine that partnership is just like on paper,
yeah,
because they had Jensen, they had Sam Altman.
yeah,
Like, you don't get those guys to show up to your capital markets day to talk about what they're
right,
doing in AI unless they're actually doing something. Because that could be a press release.
yeah.
Uh, you know, they could send someone
Sure.
who's not the CEO. So it was very clear that there's something going on there. And I hope we get an update soon.
Yeah, I did too, buddy. Well, hey, we went a little bit long, but it was a great conversation. Why don't you take us home?
Absolutely. We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topic interesting. If anyone would like to provide a topic for a future podcast, please reach out to us on social media. Will's at Willtown Tech, and I'm at Anshel Sog. We hope you have a great weekend, and please tune in again next week. And don't forget to rate us and subscribe.